ladies and gentlemen. Very honored to be here with you. Very honored to have the chance to interview Mr. Martin Ford. Congratulations for your keynote. And I'll let you breathe for a while.
Thank you.
I will try to address some of our concerns with Mr. Ford. Our concerns regarding the existential threats that come together with AI, artificial intelligence. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So my first question is linked to one of your key ideas that on a long term, we will have to decouple jobs from the income. And I'm thinking that here in the audience are many, many CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs, and their concern would be, what does that really mean? What does it mean to decouple jobs from income?
Right. It's not a problem that a business can really solve. I mean, ultimately, I think that's going to require that the government steps in and supplements income in some ways. But it is critical to people like CEOs, because what you have to understand is that if over time AI displaces people from jobs, or maybe it makes workers less valuable so that wages become lower and lower, then of course everyone has less money to spend, which means that there's less demand in the economy. So if you're running a business, you're going to see fewer viable customers out there. And that's the real risk in the long term that we could run into. And I think that ultimately, if in fact it unfolds in this way, we're going to have to see government step in to find a way to solve this problem, to get more income, more purchasing power into the hands of people so that we can continue to have a vibrant market economy. And that's why I've talked a lot about ideas like a universal basic income or other forms of income supplementation, but this is something that has to be done by governments. But, you know, for sure, this is a radical idea. I mean, especially in the United States, it's you know, we have a relatively conservative take on this, and you know, I think it's important to discuss these ideas and perhaps experiment them, but realistically, I don't think that we're going to do something so radical until we really get into a crisis. That seems to be how the world works, right? That you know, we don't do anything really dramatic unless we're in the midst of a real crisis. So I would expect that will be the case here as well.
Let's talk a little about universal basic income. Wouldn't this inhibit any competition? Wouldn't this, in the end, kill capitalism?
No, I think it could save capitalism, because remember that businesses would still compete to sell into the market, but if everyone had an income, they would have more money to spend to create more demand for that. So, you know, I think that a universal basic income could be the thing that actually saves capitalism from itself, right? Because if innovations result in less market demand, less purchasing power out there to buy the products that are produced by businesses, then that could undermine the whole system.
One of your ideas in your book, Rule of the Robots, is that we should tax more technology. Could you expand on this?
Right. Well, I think obviously if you're going to have something like a universal basic income, the money has to come from somewhere. So you're going to have to raise that money through increased taxation. Now what's happening is that businesses in the future could potentially spend a lot less on labor, right? If they hire fewer workers or pay less in terms of wages, then what we have to do instead would be to tax capital rather than labor. And this can, you know, be a very controversial idea. Some economists would be very opposed to this, but ultimately, if in fact labor essentially goes away and businesses become all capital because everything becomes automated, then the only alternative is to tax that capital or to tax the technology, and to then use that income to provide an income to workers. So that's the general idea here, is you would replace wages with another source of income that would be based on taxation.
Thank you. Another of another one of your main idea is that we should focus on regulating artificial intelligence. And isn't here a paradox that we will try to regulate a non-human entity, but in the same time, we teach this entity to make its own decisions, to adapt like an organic entity, and like to try to select itself like in a Darwinian way. So how is this paradox solvable?
Well, I'm not sure it's, at this point, I'm not sure it's a paradox. Maybe it will be more of a paradox if we truly have AI that reach human capability. But we don't have that right now. The AI systems that we have are all specialized. They all, for the most part, do specific things. And we are going to need to regulate the application of those technologies when they impact people's lives. As I said in the talk, for example, when you're using artificial intelligence to screen resumes, for example, to determine who's going to get an interview for a job, you need to make sure that that's done in a fair way, that certain people aren't discriminated against. If AI is used within medicine, for example, to provide medical opinions or to do what some of the tasks that are now being done by doctors, clearly we need to regulate that to make sure that it's proficient, that it's not provided missing, wrong information. So those are all areas where once it is utilized in a specific way, we really, of course, are going to have to control it and regulate it.
One of the key topics in this general global problem of artificial intelligence is called, from what I've learned, the alignment problem. That means we should teach these machines to not harm people and, in a way, to take care of us. Is this true?
Right. That's the last point that I mentioned, this potential for what some people believe is an existential threat from superintelligence. And essentially the alignment problem, or sometimes it's called the control problem, is a concern that a machine that's potentially more capable than us, more intelligent than us, might not be aligned with our values, and therefore it might do things that could harm us, perhaps truly in an existential way that might ultimately wipe out humanity. That's the greatest concern. And there is a lot of research being done into that. There are a number of think tanks with very, very smart people that are actually working on this problem. How do you build machines that will in fact be aligned? But it's certainly not a solved problem. But a lot of research is going into that, and I think that's a good thing for sure. It's not that I dismiss this problem. I think it's a legitimate concern, and it's a very good thing that some smart people are working on this.
How can we regulate this? Are there any means to do this in this moment?
Well, again, I don't know if at this point we want governments to focus on this issue of an existential alignment problem, because I think it's something that lies further in the future. I don't think we understand it well enough to try to regulate that now. And as I said before, there are so many other immediate concerns, the misinformation, the potential for bias, the potential that we could build autonomous weapons. These are things happening right now. So that, there's very clearly a need for regulation and a lot of thought, because, it could be happening right now or it could be happening next year, whereas this alignment issue is something for the much longer term. And I do think that it's good that we've got these smaller organizations working on this. We've got some very smart people focused on it, but I think that that's kind of an appropriate level of resources being invested in this at the moment, rather than having governments try to do it.
If we take into consideration the refusal, nobody wants to stop the research regarding artificial intelligence. I mean, the governments for sure won't stop. If we take this thought further, doesn't this mean that this planet has the only chance in a global government?
Well, I mean, I think that artificial intelligence can be regulated at the national level. There's clearly going to be competition both between businesses and between governments to push this technology forward. The future is going to be unpredictable. I mean, I've talked a lot about the potential impacts that we see on the economy and on society, but no one really knows what it's going to look like in the future. I don't know it necessarily implies that there's going to be a global government because of AI, but that's certainly one possibility.
You said that China for sure won't stop. That was my...
Right. I mean, there's going to be intense competition between the West, between China, and also between individual businesses. So it's inevitable that this technology will advance. I mean, I don't think that there's any realistic or conceivable way that we could all agree to halt research into artificial intelligence. That's not going to happen. It's going to continue to advance, and therefore, our best strategy is going to be to figure out how to regulate it, how to mitigate the dangers that are going to come coupled with it.
I have some questions from the audience, if you...
Sure.
Number one, how should we prepare our children? What skills do we need to teach them in order to live in an AI-powered world?
Right. Well, as I said, I had the slide where I talked about those three areas. I think that creativity and the ability to work with people are two things that are likely to be fairly resilient in the face of this technology. So in terms of education and skill sets, those will be very important. But I also think that we should be, giving all students, certainly at the university level, even at earlier levels, we should be giving them an understanding of artificial intelligence. But I don't mean, trying to train people in the technical details of AI, but rather in the consequences of the technology, the potential of the technology, what it can mean. Because, as I've been saying, I think this is the single most important technology that's going to really shape our future. So it's something that everyone should have at least a basic understanding of, and we should certainly be training all of our students.
Number two, please suggest at least one job for the future for each gender.
For each gender? I mean, I don't think that jobs are any more limited by gender, are they? So certainly, if you can work with AI, if you can become, the best example would be an AI researcher. If you can work with artificial intelligence, in some way, that those are going to be the jobs that have the greatest opportunity. To somehow ride the coattails of this technology as it advances. Those would be the most desirable professions. And I think that within any given profession, there will be opportunities to do that. That's what you should be focused on. But certainly, that's not limited in any way by gender.
If you would be the advisor of the Romanian government, let's put it like this. Romania has only 1% of the businesses powered by AI. What would you suggest?
Well, clearly, this is something that's very important. That's why I think that this event, forums like this are incredibly important, because we're getting the word out, right? We're making people recognize that this is going to be such a critical technology. But I would say in general that no business that hopes to be globally competitive or even really locally competitive ultimately is going to be able to turn away from AI or not understand this technology. I mean, the point I made in my talk is that this is becoming a general purpose technology. It's becoming like electricity, right? So we're going to approach a time when failing to leverage artificial intelligence in your business is like effectively disconnecting from the electrical grid, right? Which no sane business person would do. AI is going to be like that. So there really isn't a choice here. If you're going to run a competitive business, you need to have at least a basic understanding of this technology, what it can do for you, how you can utilize it, and how it's going to help you compete. Otherwise, you're certainly going to be left behind.
What do you think about AI on blockchain? Do you think it can help on transparency, or in that way we can lose control and AI will become fully autonomous?
I don't pretend to be an expert on the blockchain. I'm always been a bit skeptical of that technology, to be honest. So I'm not really sure how to answer that. Yeah.
2 more questions.
Okay.
I see you're tired. How would the politicians see the AI being used for their evaluation?
How would they
see AI being used
to evaluate them? Yes, they might not be happy with that, I would imagine. A lot of politicians aren't especially good at their jobs, so a very objective evaluation of them, by an intelligent algorithm might not be something they'd be thrilled about. Another question is, someday will AI, be able to replace what politicians do? And I think that's probably an even more terrifying scenario for them.
And the last one, what can we look into as future research directions on artificial intelligence for organizations, management, and even public institutions?
Well, I think that AI is going to become critical, and as I said, it's going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be integrated into organizations. Organizations are going to continue to rely on it, and it's going to become ever more capable. So it's going to replace a lot of the functions now being done by humans are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. And in theory, artificial intelligence should be better. It should be more objective, more accurate, better at making predictions, more efficient at managing resources and so forth. And so organizations of all kinds are really going to benefit from that. And again, it's going to be critical for every organization to understand the potential there, because if they don't, then they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage.
If you'd like to deliver a final message to this audience.
Just as I said before, that I think artificial intelligence is the most consequential technology that we have today. I think that it's literally going to shape the future. I think it's going to continue to advance at a very rapid pace. And I also think it's going to be very unpredictable. So, I can't tell you what the future is going to look like. I really can't predict that. All I can tell you is that we're going to see a great deal of disruptive change, and it's going to be extremely important to understand this technology as it advances, because we're going to have to think on our feet. It's going to be unpredictable. So whatever happens, we're going to have to address that as it unfolds. And so we really need to, all of us, have an understanding of this technology and what it can mean for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.